Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sonship Sports Channel. Chris here again. Going to talk to you a little bit about what's been going on with Brent Venables and Deion Sanders, or should I say Coach Sanders to me. We've obviously had quite a bit of drama as it pertains to the transfer portal, as well as NIL. So just going to chat about that for a few minutes. Remember to smash the like button, the subscribe button, leave me a comment or two. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. I've said for a while now, I think that college football is basically just the minor leagues of the NFL. Now, you might say, well, Chris, it's been like that for a while. Yeah, but not like this. You have a lot more money involved at the player level now in college football. It's always been there for the coaches and the institutions and things of that nature. So in one instance, it's very good. I'm glad that these players are getting compensated for putting their bodies on the line for our entertainment every Saturday. There's obviously some things that need to be addressed, though. I'm not going to jump in and pick sides because I don't think either one's right or wrong, but former defensive coordinator of the Clemson Tigers and now head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners, Brent Venables, kind of gave a shot across the bow at Coach Sanders over there in Colorado because basically Deion just renovated his whole team. And Deion snapped back and said, hey, look, I didn't inherit the Oklahoma Sooners. I didn't inherit 4 offensive linemen that were going to be NFL players. I didn't inherit a 1,000-yard rusher. So from that standpoint, I can understand where Coach Sanders is coming from. I also understand where Coach Venables is coming from. He's thinking in his old school mindset that he wants to build a program from recruiting and making good choices and growing the student athlete, so to speak. He's not looking at it as just a 100% business. But those days are going to be coming for all of them sooner, probably rather than later. And do I think there does need to be a few regulations? Sure. If you don't, what you're going to have is a situation like you do with Major League Baseball where there's no salary cap. The transfer portal has basically become college free agency, and the NIL deals that are done by the collectives, because the universities aren't supposed to be involved. Okay. But once this starts hitting into full bore here, you have a lot of these Texas schools that are going to have collectives that have deep pockets with oil money. Notre Dame just hired a brand new athletic director who seems hell-bent on bringing championships back to Notre Dame. Notre Dame has of yet to get heavily involved in NIL. But if they ever do decide to start getting those collectives involved, they're going to have some deep pockets too with the Catholic Church and everything like that. You just, the alumni at some of these institutions are just ridiculous. And a lot of it has to do with the states that they play in. States like Texas that don't have sales tax and things of that nature. State income tax. It's going to be more destination places. So you're going to see a lot of schools not be able to compete with certain other schools. You know, kind of how long-term the Royals can't compete with the Yankees because the money's just too great. The Royals may have a very good farm team that supplies good players, but after a couple of years, they leave Kansas City because Boston, New York, Chicago, or LA offers them way more money than Kansas City could even imagine. And this is probably going to happen in college football too, if they don't start paying attention to some of this stuff. I've always wanted the college football player to get compensated. But to be honest, I'm thinking more along the lines of the kid who's probably not going to go to the NFL, who just wants to have a job during the week or something like that, a part-time gig, and they wouldn't let him have it because he's on scholarship for sports. Now, the guys who are going to the NFL, they're not going to have to worry about getting paid because they're going to get paid at the next level. Unless we are not talking about allowing kids to have jobs and stuff like that, and the conversation is shifting over to we want them to be able to reap in the rewards of what their university is making off of their backs. I guess I can understand that as well. Hey, I'm a free market guy. I want there to be fair play, but I think you're going to see a lot of teams, and in a lot of conferences, you're going to see a lot of worst to first stuff where by using the transfer portal, you can bring in almost 2 full new starting teams on offense and defense. I think my personal opinion on this, and this is why guys like Dabo Swinney and Brent Venables and Nick Saban, and some of the what I would call bigger, more dominant universities that maybe aren't in huge markets. I mean, Alabama is not an economic mecca. It just isn't. Not compared to some of these other locations that are in places like Texas and Florida and things of that nature, and some of these high population centers. Nick Saban has been dominant for a long time. I will go to my grave believing that some of this NIL and transfer portal stuff is to basically try and get to try to get the playing field more level, and by instituting college free agency. So say for instance, Alabama recruits several 5-star athletes every year, some at the same position. And now that one who doesn't crack the starting lineup, and he's just a hair behind the other 5-star, he now transfers out. So, well, I can go to Florida and start day one. And now Nick Saban, who's been recruiting this kid for 18 months, is just out of luck. And now the depth on his team is a lot thinner because he doesn't have that other guy who's almost just as good as the first guy on the team anymore. And I guess to a certain extent, transferring players has been a part of college football, but not at this level. Now it's, I think we're getting to the point where, these kids aren't trying to, quote unquote, win the starting job as much as they are trying to find a wide open job at some other university. Now, when it comes to parity, that may be a great thing, but these great recruiting coaches who have built these national powerhouses aren't a big fan of it, and we all know why. I mean, it's going to make their job harder. Their team is not going to be as deep, and these other teams are going to automatically get better who couldn't recruit as well as them just because they couldn't crack the starting lineup at the original school that did recruit them. So I understand also why Nick Saban is a little bit salty about some of this, and some of the other. Nick's not the only one. Let's be clear on that. Nick is not the only head coach in college football that isn't crazy about how the transfer portal works, because of how quickly you can basically just take players from another school that, not that school was abusing them or anything like that. They just weren't getting enough playing time. And I haven't been a big fan of transferring because you can't win the starting job where you're at. I mean, I get it in today's kind of me first mentality, but that's not necessarily, in my opinion, a team sport mentality or a football mentality. It's kind of, I just want to get the bag. I want to get my bag. And that's becoming more prevalent. And we're going to start doing this at a high school level. I mean, you've got freshmen that while they're still in high school are signing these $1 million deals now with these collective corporations, basically. And by the time they're 18 years old, they're making 3 times as much as what their parents have. Now, how do you have any kind of semblance of authority or be able to mentor somebody when they have enough money, as they say, FU money, to basically do whatever they want? So it's a very tricky subject. I find myself leaping around on it because there's abusers on every side. And so when I see abuse happening, the pendulum for me swings to the other side almost too far. And I find myself taking a different stance. I don't like it when you have the what I would call the uber traditionalists that, they're getting a degree and that should be good enough. I'm like, no, we're past that. So then I go too far to the other side, and all of a sudden I find myself with a bunch of people that are like, 17-year-olds should have $5 million right out of high school, and they haven't played a snap in college. And then I'm like, no, I've gone too far in that direction now. So we've got to find some kind of balance. There needs to be some kind of regulation, not just on NIL, but I think on the transfer portal. Largely, like I said, due in part to kids should not be rewarded for getting beaten out by another player. Now, look, if there is academic issues or there are problems with the coaching staff or what have you, but a lot of this stuff is, for instance, you just saw last year's bowl-winning starting quarterback in South Bend, Indiana, Tyler Buckner for the University of Notre Dame, just transferred to the Alabama Crimson Tide, where he actually is going to have, it sounds funny to say this, he's got a better shot at cracking the starting lineup at quarterback at Alabama than he does at Notre Dame right now. Alabama going through a weird time. Tyler Buckner, and I was at the game. I watched the spring game of Notre Dame this year. Went there with family, and we watched the game. And the difference between Sam Hartman and Tyler Buckner is night and day. Now, Sam Hartman transferred to Notre Dame, and he's like, an 11th year senior at this point. I don't know. I think he's a 6th year senior. Holds a ton of ACC passing records. He wasn't transferring because he couldn't crack the starting lineup someplace. He was transferring because I strongly believe he believes the University of Notre Dame will give him a bigger launching pad into the NFL next year when he goes into the draft. So he left Wake Forest and he came to Notre Dame. So he transferred as what you call a graduate transfer, which is largely what you have normally seen in the past. A guy who does 3 years or 4 years at one school, and then for his last year, he goes and plays someplace else to try to bump up his draft stock. Well, he gets to Notre Dame, and Tyler Buckner, who still has a few years left in college if he wants it, does not look even close to being the quarterback that Sam Hartman is. Sam Hartman was dropping dimes to freshmen on that field, and Buckner was struggling. And I think Buckner watched the tape of that game and said, wow, this guy's way better than I am. I'm out of here because I don't want to sit the bench or try to work harder to beat this guy out. I'm never going to be as talented. So I'm just going to leave and try to go play someplace where I can get on the field. And when you see something like that, that does kind of disappoint me because he just decided to leave due to the fact that he knew he wasn't good enough to beat out the other guy. And I don't think I can ever get on board with that being a valid reason. Now, I would stop short of saying, make that illegal for somebody to transfer for that reason. But I do think there needs to be some more regulations on what happens with the transfer portal. I understand why Coach Dion did what he did in Colorado. I don't love it. There's a lot a lot of student athletes, and remember the first word in there is student. A lot of student athletes now have to go to another college because they received a scholarship to play sports at Colorado, and they only may be 1 or 2 years into their college experience and are studying and may not be NFL caliber. And we all know Dion wants NFL caliber at the Colorado Buffs. And so you have this sophomore or whatever who's trying to get his physics degree or whatever he's going for, and Dion just takes away his scholarship because Dion knows that in the Pac-12, that sophomore isn't going to be legit enough to compete with the type of schools he now wants to compete with. So you're not just cutting a guy from an NFL team, you're kicking a kid out of college. Now, obviously, if he's playing offensive line for the Colorado Buffaloes, he can transfer to someplace else and he's going to get another scholarship. But that wasn't the deal when he signed up. The last regime gave him a scholarship, and now this one's taking it away. And I just have a problem with how that goes down. It's look, I can be as ruthless as they come, but man, that's pretty brutal. And we're getting to the point where somebody, I said that to someone the other day, and they go, "Well, Chris, you got to understand it's a business." And I go, "Yeah, but college football didn't used to be, at least not as much." And now the money involved in college football with all of the different, I mean, I remember when it was just like college football was on ABC and CBS, and you saw, a few teams and stuff like that. Every single team gets on TV now. And that's great. Don't get me wrong. That's great. But with that, you have all these TV deals and everything like that. And college football has become just as big a business as the NFL does. The problem is that with the NFL, you're dealing with grown-ass men. You're dealing with 32-year-olds and stuff like that understand, hey, this is a business. This is my line of work that I'm in. It's all business, baby. Ain't nothing personal. They understand that when they're 32. 17, 18, and 19-year-olds, I don't know if they should be dealing with quite that level. I mean, do you really want to get these kids that jaded that fast? So, I don't know. Like I said, tell me what you think. Smash the like button, smash the subscribe button, give me some comments. This story isn't going anywhere, folks. So we can debate about this all day long. Let me reiterate, I do like NIL, I do like the transfer portal, but I do think there needs to be some reins put on it. Otherwise, we're going to have a runaway train, and you're going to have a lot of students, the student part of student athlete, having some issues. So thanks again, and we will see you on Tuesday night when we do the AFC East preview. And Casey and I are going to be dropping a video talking about all things Green Bay Packers. So if you guys want to hear that and love the Packers, or if you hate the Packers and you just want to hear how maybe their demise is coming, go ahead and tune in, and we will fill up your need for all things football. So thanks again, and we'll talk soon.